Danielle Houston. I'm the host of this podcast, The Checkup. I am also a client advisor at Lockton Companies. And you will notice from here going forward, we are going to be talking about our approach as people solutions, transitioning away from this singular concept of health and welfare advisors to helping our employers with all of the things that touch their people. One of the things that involves people at our clients and our friends of Lockton are global employees. And as you might imagine, as the world has become a bit of a smaller place, that global footprint for many of these US-based organizations starts to expand in many interesting places and different places around the world. Nick Dobelbower is our Director of Global Benefits here at Lockton. He is joining me to tell us a little bit about what our practice there looks like and how we can help employers who have people around the world. Nick, welcome.
Danielle, thanks for having me. Delighted to be having this conversation with you.
And me too, because I think A, we haven't done this yet, and B, there are so many organizations in the Pacific Northwest with a global footprint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see that, in the United States around both coasts, the East Coast, the West Coast, maybe the periphery tends to have a lot of multinationals, but the Pacific Northwest is a really important space, and you have some great multinational companies in your backyard.
We do. Let's not get too far ahead, though, before you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I have an interesting background, I would say. I'm a bit of a career changer. You may know that already. I started out in an academic discipline. I have a PhD in literature and French literature, to be precise. So I've always kind of had an international background. I speak French, I've taught in French, but about 18 years ago, I decided to make some changes in my life. I kind of transitioned working in the teaching space to working for intergovernmental organizations. So I worked in France at the OECD, which some people don't know well in the US. It's fairly well known in Europe, but it's an IGO that implemented the Marshall Plan after World War II. The United States is a member, and I worked in the Directorate of Labor and Migration. So areas touching labor law, country practice. From that, I started working in consulting and more specifically employee benefits. So I've been doing that really for the last 15 years. I love working with colleagues around the world. That's something that's never changed. And I love working with clients and companies that have people around the world.
And while on one hand, I could say, how on earth could you have made a path from where you were into employee benefits? I can also see how that background and also having that heart for academia helps you to be somewhat of a teacher in this space, as well as connecting the practices and the experiences you've had around the world to the experiences and the complexities that we see today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, let's call it my academic origins were really helpful. A lot of international is learning new things, not just one jurisdiction, but, over 100 jurisdictions where we support clients. So I love learning. I think also consulting is a lot like teaching. So that's been a really strong connection for me, is bridging sort of that teaching background, listening, teaching with consulting has been great. And I don't, of course, just have a background in literature. I've done actually quite a few diplomas and programs in employee benefits. And I have a diploma in international employee benefits, which maybe isn't as well known in the US. It's a UK delivered program. And a number of acronyms. I guess I like connecting, sort of letters after my name. I have a number of those also in employee benefits.
Well, there is absolutely no doubt about your skill and your expertise. And I'll share with the listeners what I shared with you a couple of weeks ago. At my prior, we didn't have any global expertise, but we would connect clients, with a carrier who could offer a plan. And I really thought we were doing a great job in that space, and what more could really be done in that space until I met you and started hearing and learning about the work that we do with clients internationally. So now I have a much better understanding of what can be done, and I'm excited to introduce you here in the Northwest. Can we start with maybe what are the maybe one or two things that you have noticed that have really changed in complexity or in need in the last 2 years?
Wow. I mean, a ton has changed in the last 2 years. And you mentioned sort of your own evolution in interacting with global, and it used to mean a carrier, and now it's starting to mean other things to you. I mean, I might add for Lockton, there has been an evolution too. Lockton is a firm really dedicated to our organic growth, to growing with our clients. And the global practice at Lockton did start a long time ago, focused on that sort of, outwardly mobile employee from a US company. So that was about connecting with carriers, expatriate benefits, assignee benefits. Since then, Lockton has been an international company itself for about 16 years and is now present in over 30 countries. We fit into a niche that is pretty exclusive in terms of our global footprint, but maybe even more so in terms of how we work with clients in a very consultative manner. We don't have a cookie cutter approach to global. And I think that really served us well over the past couple of years, because there was nothing cookie cutter about the last couple of years. So kind of circle back to what you were asking. I think some of the biggest things we've seen is multinational companies that had a good global offering, had competitive or at least standard benefits in a lot of countries, suddenly asked themselves when the pandemic hit, hey, but do we have this? Do we have that? And by this and that, it was often, how do we deliver healthcare to our employees who are working from home or who are in quarantine? And so it really propelled things like telemedicine to a place that it wasn't before. And on the US side, telemedicine's been around for a while. It's been around in other countries, a smaller number of other countries for a while as well. But this totally changed the dynamic. So companies immediately wanted to know, in my 5 countries, in my 15, in my 50 countries, where do they have access to telemedicine and where don't they? So there was a bit of a mad scramble and a realization that, hey, we probably need to know more about these plans around the world than we know today. That really was huge. The other immediate thing, of course, was, are our employees adequately covered in all these countries? Is this going to be classified as an epidemic, as a pandemic, as an endemic at some point? And will our disability plans cover COVID-related illness? There wasn't too much concern about medical plans. That was pretty quick, but disability and life benefits, there were a lot of questions, and there were concerning questions in a few jurisdictions. So that was another sort of moment of awareness. Do we know about the exclusions in our policies in our 5, 10, 50 countries? So there was a bit of a scramble around that. And as we worked through the pandemic, there was a growing awareness of just the importance of well-being more broadly, the mental health well-being aspects that we've all been dealing with, and we probably will continue to deal with for some time. So that really propelled sort of the mental well-being question that we had been, I would say we, meaning a lot of multinationals, had been dabbling in for a number of years. That really propelled that to the fore. And very serious work being done about how we support the mental well-being of our people wherever they are in the world.
It's interesting, and I know you will get into this in some more detail when you're here in Seattle and having conversations with HR leaders. But this space of where did you see things be very similar between U.S. based benefits and questions and what's happening with employees and the similarities globally, and then where were things really, really different? It's interesting to hear you talk about areas where, internationally there was a need for some catch up, and how a different country is going to have very different challenges with a number of benefits that we might not think about here unless you're digging into it with a consultant like yourself.
Yeah, I think we all became more sensitive to the different realities of our people in different countries, and some of them are cultural, some of them are socioeconomic. So, I think many multinationals uh, realized in a different way that, for example, living arrangements in India are often different than they are in San Francisco. And you may have in-laws living in the same house with you, and parents and cousins in different countries might also be in that kind of communal environment with you. That had a huge impact on how COVID affected those families, those employees. In other countries, or cities like Hong Kong, just the living space, the size that people were living in, and for extended periods of time, the types of restrictions there were on movement as well, different types of mandates affected employees differently in many countries, and it created, very specific stressors, and in contexts that maybe we weren't as familiar with until the pandemic hit. So.
Yeah. Well, I look forward into digging more into that with you. So back in April, Lockton had a gathering and we had great updates around, what our practices look like in areas around the world where we saw differences, where we saw growth, and the global space was a tremendous area of growth for Lockton. And we don't say that in an effort to pat ourselves on the back. It was more like we're doing something really well here and serving clients really well in this space if these are the outcomes we're seeing. What are we doing differently in that space, Nick? What's driving that success for us globally?
Yeah, that's a great question, Danielle. I suspect that there are some listeners who think sort of global benefits um, is for large, very sophisticated multinationals. The reality is that there are multinationals of all kinds of sizes. We've been talking about this for some time now. We're starting to see a pattern that we had anticipated, where the US headquarters might be a couple hundred people, and then there might be several thousand people outside of the US and in different countries. So, there's a reality of what a company footprint looks like. And Lockton is very aware that the kind of support that a multinational of any size needs should not be sort of the exclusive domain of very large, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees around the world. A multinational company of 500, of 2,000, of 5,000 employees worldwide has the exact same needs. And interestingly, maybe in as many countries as a company that has 20 or 50,000 employees. So we work with clients that may have that, let's say, 2,000, 5,000 employee headcount, but they may well be in 20, 30, 50 countries with those numbers. And so this is a real challenge, and it takes a specific type of approach, I think, to provide all of the support and services that a big company, that a big firm could offer, that a company needs. And Lockton, I think, is really well built, and our sort of corporate ethos is great for providing that kind of big firm capability and service to a client of diverse sizes. So, and our clients really do range across that spectrum. whether you're talking about the 1,000 or the 50,000, the needs are really the same. And I think that's what we're working very hard to. And I think being successful at delivering a very customized service across the board from, strategy and philosophy. A smaller firm may not have taken the steps to think, hey, we know our benefits philosophy in the US. Outside of the US, our approach has been to let's do, of course, what's legal and what we need to do. And maybe we don't know enough about those countries, so we'll leave a little bit of autonomy and let those countries kind of figure out what they need. That kind of organic and natural approach is common, but there's a lot of opportunity to work with a company like that and help them really understand the landscape in each of their countries, how they can develop a sort of employee value proposition that transcends countries. It doesn't mean that you have identical benefits, because countries are very different, that's true, but you can have a common philosophy, a common approach, and you can translate those values into benefits that are meaningful for that specific country. So the employees feel, looked after, feel like they're part of a common purpose, a common organization, and are equally important, even if they're only 20 people in Singapore and not the 200 or 2,000 in India.
Interesting. So are those some of the things that we're doing differently that are creating maybe more opportunities for us to have discussions, or are there some other things at play as well?
Yeah, those things are important, and maybe it seems odd that I would talk about that, but I think for some other firms, it's a little more challenging for them to treat all countries of all sizes in a common manner, and that's really an objective that we have as a practice at Lockton. No country is too small, no headcount is too small. They need to be part of the strategy, and there are solutions that we can bring to bear for them. So we're looking in a situation like that at kind of novel approaches. It might be consolidating some of the insurance across those smaller groups to common carriers. It might be setting up a multinational pool, which in itself is not something unique. But for example, what we decided to do was create our own locked-in multinational pool specifically for clients who might not be ready yet to set up their own multinational pool. And by working with the locked-in pool, what we're able to do is offer sort of coverage levels and contract terms that an organization might need 200 or 300 people in a country to have. We can offer that for 5 people in the country. So we've designed things for the multinational, sort of, let's call it a mid-sized multinational, to make all of the sort of more sophisticated tools available to them, even though they might be a little bit smaller. So that is part of our support strategy.
And I would imagine benefits leaders and HR leaders must appreciate our willingness as an organization to help them understand things they don't know yet and get outside of maybe what the conversation is they've become used to is, here's a spreadsheet with some international options, pick a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of calls back to the earlier discussion we had about being a teacher, and how important that is. I do think a real difference with Lockton is that we don't approach global benefits as a cookie cutter transactional activity. And we really want our clients to feel that they are learning about their own plans. And to achieve that, we put really experienced and seasoned consultants on each client team. So we're not sort of passing around information on spreadsheets exclusively. We've also got people who have worked on the HR side. For example, some of the team members have been directors of global benefits at large media companies, director of global benefits at global business management consulting firms, have worked in the insurance industry. Like, I think you have a background like that as well. So we have associates who have done that. We have several who are lawyers, and so they help on the sort of compliance related side, some who have more academic background. So a diverse team of consultants that allows us to put really seasoned professionals in our client teams so that our clients are learning about their own plans and about the global landscape.
Well, I am only assuming, of course, that there are going to be people who listen to this who are really curious about how you can potentially help them. Maybe like me, they're working with an agency where they're getting, good carrier options, but aren't aware that there is an organization like ours who can really help them think much more big picture about their philosophy and their people and some of these compliance issues. But in that assumption, I would also imagine that there are people who would really like to talk with you and learn more about what we can do.
Uh, I'm looking forward to being on the Pacific Northwest. Looking forward to working with you, Danielle, and any companies that are interested in talking, learning more about global benefits. It's a fascinating world. It may seem intimidating, but look, we're all people. We have our own cultures, but we also have a lot in common. And it's a fascinating space. And I would love to accompany anyone who's interested in learning more about it.
And we can figure it out together, which is a really common sort of mantra that I have had over the last couple of years. What can we do if we can do this together? It's a lot less complicated, I think.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to welcoming you here. Just so you know, our humidity will be much less than where you're at now. It will probably be a wonderful time for you to come out and spend time here, and we'll look forward to taking you around and meeting all kinds of different people while you're here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. As you suspect, it's quite humid in Washington, D.C. this time of year. So I'm looking forward to that
Yes,
too. Yeah,
indeed. And Pacific Northwest, we are looking forward to spending time with you too. So we will look forward to connecting with you. And until the next time, take good care.